APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Concili Incorporated is Nevada's premier Democratic campaign firm, fighting for progressive issues and candidates for over a decade, and proud sponsor of Battle-Born Progress.
This episode of Out in Front brought to you by
Concili Inc., Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt, as well as our episode sponsors, Save Lives Nevada and Washoe Education Association.
Good evening, everyone out there on the interwebs. My name is Will Pregman. I'm the Communications Director for Battle-Born Progress, and welcome to an exciting edition of Out in Front. It's not Out in Front with Annette. Today it's Out in Front with Will, so that means the show's going to be a little bit of a different tempo, but I hope that's okay. We have some fantastic guests with us tonight who we're going to discuss early voting, which, if you didn't already know, has been going on since this past weekend. It began on Saturday, October 22nd, and runs until November 4th. And we are doing everything we possibly can to make sure that every Nevadan out there knows their rights and ability to vote and has all the resources that they need in order to do so. And so my guests and I tonight are going to break down some of the things that we've been seeing just in the first week of early voting, what our predictions are based on this data, and also just some of our general impressions of where we feel things are at and what needs to happen in the next 12 days in order to make sure that we don't have weirdos in charge of our election systems and other state agencies. So without further ado, I want to bring in our first guest of the panel this evening, which is Bradley Schrager, friend of the show, once again, joining us to talk about all things in the legal world. Bradley, my first question for you is, you're our lawyer all year round, but during these crucial months and weeks and days and hours and minutes of the election cycle, what is it that you're doing to keep yourself busy? And what issues in particular are you monitoring and watching for in the election as it develops?
Yeah, no, first of all, hello, Will. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on. You say election season, and, when I first started doing election law and political law, it took up a little bit of my time, right? Every couple of years. Now it's essentially what I do year round all the time. It is always election season. What has changed recently, obviously, in the run up to the election is the intensity that you're seeing now. I am fortunate enough to represent a lot of organizations, nonprofits, PACs, candidates, IE groups, all those sorts of things. So, my tasks as we get closer to the election tend to shift a little bit, as does the activity of a lot of organizations, where one hemisphere of my brain is dealing with helping my clients who are still trying to persuade people who to vote for, right? The advocacy portion. The other hemisphere of my brain is intensely focused upon the more practical aspects, the voter education, get out the vote, and what has become probably the most important part of my job, which is election protection. Because when you want to talk about what the issues are that we're dealing with now, I've been doing this for a long time. Voter protection was always a phrase we used. The word protection has never meant as much as it does right now. We have never faced the need for not just physical protection, but the need to make sure that everybody knows their rights, that knows that there are people out there fighting for their rights and are helping to clear the obstacles that opponents of voting and fair elections are continually setting up to keep people from exercising the franchise, right? So I mean, much like many of the nonprofit organizations, what we're going through in the next few days is moving from the advocacy portion to the voter protection as people are, going to the polls and filling out their ballots and doing all those things. And so that's filling most of my days. I hope I probably look tired because I am tired, but we got a long way to go, right? Oh, you're muted, Will.
Sorry about that. Hosting duties,
Yeah.
as you know. Yes, you definitely look like you've are going through it. That sweater does look very comfy though,
Well,
so I hope that is providing a little bit of warmth and comfort in these trying times. On that subject of election protection, I just got off a call with a reporter on this very subject, which is the subject of voter intimidation, and something we've luckily haven't seen yet here, but have seen some news stories out of Arizona, is these like armed MAGA dudes hanging around polling places, like trying to hassle people and ask them, if they're a mule or whatever. Does that raise alarm bells for you? And are we trying to watch to prevent anything like that from happening here?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you are a state with races that are so important both locally and nationally to the balance of the Senate, or as a bellwether state for the next presidential election, right? You're going to draw people who are so obsessed with their side's push toward whatever it is, victory, their version of a clean, fair election, right? Or to defend what they call election integrity. You have the possibility of people going over the top. And while we haven't seen yet in Clark County the sorts of things you're talking about down in Arizona, we are getting reports out of places like Nye County, that there are folks hanging around, open carrying, a little too aggressive, a little too loud, a little too intimidating. Right? I mean, everyone on this call and probably all the folks watching know that the ballot place is supposed to be a sacred zone of safety and reflection. And I don't like it when I see a police cruisers hanging around polling sites. They may say, "Hey, we're here to make sure everything goes smoothly." Well, your presence doesn't help it go smoothly sometimes, and you need to understand that. So yes, we are very sensitive to it, even on that level. So if anything like what happened down in Arizona starts to occur here, we will jump into action as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think that's critically important, and I think it's something that we at Battleborn Progress have flagged for sure, because we do a lot of work around gun violence prevention just in general, but specifically on the issue of vote centers and elections offices and things of that nature, making sure that those areas are not places where firearms are permitted, because it, like you said, it creates that kind of intimidating presence. If someone's talking to you, asking you for some sort of documentation while they've got, while they're packing heat, it's
Right.
a little bit scary, a little bit intimidating, and that's regardless of if they've got a badge on or not. And as you mentioned,
there's I don't like it when my daughter and I are in the grocery store, and there's somebody open carrying, and all I'm choosing is what to have for dinner, something that person won't be objecting to. The fact that I may be choosing who our electeds will be, and that my presence or your presence might anger or frustrate someone who's in that situation. That's not a context we want to encourage.
Yeah, most definitely. I want to bring in my next guest, which is Bethany Kahn, Communications Director for the Culinary Union, one of our great partners, and work together, especially around this time, on tons of different events and all sorts of things. Welcome, Bethany, and I wanted to have you introduce yourself and thank you for coming on and tell us a little bit about what the Culinary Union's been doing this election season to get out the vote.
Thank you. Thanks, Will. Thank you, Riley. Well, yeah, so Culinary Union is doing a lot for the midterm. So yeah, I'm Bethany Kahn. I have been working at the Culinary Union for about 10 years now. And in my 1 decade at the union, it's been so amazing to see hospitality workers have a really big say in the political process and in our state, and workers having a voice in that process. And I hope that we'll hear from a Culinary Union canvasser in a few minutes. But yeah, so right now the Culinary Union is running the largest program in the state to knock on over 1 million doors, including more than half of the Black voters, more than half of the Latino voters, and more than a third of AAPI voters in Nevada. Currently, we have 400 canvassers who are statewide, so in Reno and in Las Vegas, and they're marching every day. They're doing about 16,500 doors a day. And so it's a massive amount. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're committed to ensuring that democracy is protected, our freedoms, and we see all of these things on the ballot this year. And so it's really important for us to get out the vote for Governor Sisolak, Congresswoman Dina Titus, Congresswoman Susie Lee, Congressman Stephen Horsford, and then of course Senator Catherine Cortez Masto and beyond.
Yeah, and that beyond is important too, because there's lots of down ballot races that people, you don't always see them up on TV and whatnot, but they're just as equally, if not in some cases more so important than your senator, your congressperson, which not to downplay their importance either. But all of these races are important. All of these ballot questions are really important. And I want to kind of expand upon that. Like you said, this is a massive program. And for folks who are not, like super plugged in with this type of work, like that is a huge number of doors to be doing a day. So that is absolutely incredible. What is like, and you mentioned like with so much at stake on the ballot, our freedoms, our working families, what is kind of the conversation look like around like how crucial this election is for everyday working families in Nevada, especially kind of in this coming out of the pandemic era? Why is it so crucial this year? We always say it's the most important election, but it is.
Yeah, every election is the most important election of our lifetime. I'm still kind of young. So I think. I think that so Culinary Union members who have taken a leave of absence from their jobs are doing this canvassing. So they're guest room attendants, bartenders, cooks, cocktail and food servers. So they are the hospitality workers that make Nevada's #1 industry run, and they have taken a political leave of absence to canvass every day. And so they're having these conversations, and it's working people talking to working people at the doors, doing these one-on-one conversations that we actually do throughout the year. We don't just do canvassing and door-to-door conversations during political cycles. We do it every day as organizers, and that's how we do this. And it's, for us, it's organizing. I think there's another term called deep canvassing, but we just do one type of canvassing and organizing, and that's this voter to voter, person to person conversation. The reason why we're doing this is because during the pandemic, Democrats have had our backs and fought for things like making sure workers can go back to work, having the governor sign Senate Bill 386 to ensure that hundreds of thousands of hospitality workers could go back to their jobs after workers were laid off during the pandemic, right? And staying home for Nevada was the right thing to do, but also making sure that workers could go back to work was an important thing to do. And I'd like to say that not one Republican in the legislature voted to support workers having their jobs back. when as the pandemic subsided. So that was one thing. Senate Bill 4 was another one, not one Republican voted for, and that kept hospitality workers safe from the spread of COVID in the workplace. And SB 4 is the first and remains the only in the nation COVID worker safety law. Those two laws, workers saw during the pandemic that Democrats had their back every step of the way and that Republicans all voted to not pass those bills. And so now, as we're doing this work to get out the vote, which also includes getting out the vote for Clark County Commissioner Tex Segerblum and candidate for North Las Vegas Mayor Pat Spearman, they all stood with workers and during the pandemic. And so we're going to have their backs during this midterm. And for us, the union is having these conversations with voters because we see that corporations have been using the pandemic price gouge working families, to push workers out of homes, to make rent so unaffordable. And so we are fighting back, and we have a plan. We have a plan to win neighborhood stability, and we are signing thousands of voters up to support the neighborhood stability slate of candidates that we've talked about already. And the reason why these conversations are so strong at the doors is because voters do not believe Republicans are going to take on landlords, these massive Wall Street landlords who are stealing our homes, pushing us out of our homes, evicting us, and ruining our neighborhoods. And workers don't believe that Republicans, who just did, as I explained, nothing during the pandemic to help us, workers don't believe that Republicans are going to stand up against big oil, big pharma, Wall Street. And so that's why we're going to vote. And we have a saying, we vote, we win. And that's what we're going to do.
That's absolutely true. And you said a couple of things in there that I really resonated with. For one, the right to return legislation, which is such a massive achievement. I remember that from the last legislative session, and no Republicans supported it. It's wild to me because, Republicans right now are doing a lot of messaging of like, oh, well, people lost jobs and there was all these businesses shut down or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, then do you support those people getting their jobs back? Well, no, I guess not. Like, okay, so you don't have any solutions. Cool. And then also the point you made about the price gouging by corporations, that's another one that I think the blame often gets directed at, X party in power or elected official in power. But really, when you get down to the fundamentals of it, we're really just caught in the same battle we've been fighting, which is against the ultra rich and corporations who are just nickel and diming Americans out of, everyday things like rent and groceries and gas and everything else. Which is, I think, a key framing to how we address like the cost of living issue and inflation and things like that. And then also what you said about the neighborhood stability campaign. And folks, the reason why I think that, people don't trust candidates on this issue, particularly on affordable housing, is because if folks might have seen the headlines today that Robert Bigelow, the owner of Budget Suites, just gave another $50 million or however much money to Joe Lombardo and other Republicans on the ticket. It's a little bit weird that somebody with that much disposable income just wants to throw it away on candidates, and you got to wonder why. And it's maybe because they're not going to hold the landlords and the retail groups accountable for that kind of stuff. And we're going to put in the chat a link to neighborhoodstability.org. That's where you can learn more about this campaign and see how you can get involved as well. Bradley, I want to turn it back to you really quickly. So my question for you is, and this is one where this ties directly into what we were just talking about earlier, which is, you're monitoring for external threats, but there's also kind of internal procedures too that we need to follow as groups that do this kind of work. What are some of the typical issues that organizations will face during the election season? And what pitfalls do groups, 501c3s, C4s, et cetera, fall into when they're doing election work?
Yeah, no, that's a really important question. And speaking mainly of nonprofits for whom I do a lot of compliance work and political law work, the greatest asset that an entity like that has is their nonprofit status. And they need to guard that jealously and to have a structure that can do the things they want to do through their programs, whether if it's advocacy, voter education, get out the vote, any of those things. But develop a structure that permits that within the law and doesn't expose them to any risk by the IRS or by other actors who are always looking for the errors entities like that make to try and take them down. It's happened time and again. Compliance isn't just a couple boxes you check. It's a culture of your organization. And of course, a lot of organizations have both C3 and C4 arms, or they may be a C3 or a C4, but they do work with the other side, C3s and C4s. And clearly there are certain things a lot of things C3s cannot do. I mean, C3s are essentially public charities. They can't get involved in electoral politics. C4s can do those things, but when they work with C3s, they need to be very careful and jealously guard any interaction that they have with C3s to protect their friends and comrades in those organizations. So, it is a complex set of rules and regulations. And I know sometimes it feels like there's nobody coming down on bad actors that we see all the time. And so, sometimes clients come to me and say, look what everyone else is getting away with. Other people are getting away with murder. Why do you have us toe these lines? Why do you worry so much about, how we conduct ourselves? Well, progressive C3s and C4s especially are targets because they don't have the money and connections and resources to hold off regulators until somebody else gets in power. And oftentimes the regulators aren't interested in going after those rich and powerful groups anyway. But the groups like yours and like those represented here, and I'm sure Bethany can talk about labor unions as well, they are always going to be targets, and they're always going to be in the crosshairs of regulators, especially if there's a change of power, right? So, for example, if Jim Marchant were to become the Secretary of State of Nevada, though he apparently has no regard for campaign finance laws himself, and is in fact financing his campaign in a way that I can only describe as, frankly, it makes Michelle Fiore's campaign finance look pristine, right? But if he were to become Secretary of State, I can bet you he would be weaponizing campaign finance laws against not only Democratic candidates and Democratic electeds, but C3s and C4s that are of the progressive variety as well. So, one of the reasons why I want my clients to do the right thing isn't just because, look, we're better at this than anyone else, right? If we organize properly, we win good, fair elections, right? That's just a basic truth. But secondarily, when someone gets into power, you don't want to give them an opportunity to come back and threaten your organization because of a thread we left hanging because we didn't feel like, dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's during the election campaign previously. So that's why I'm so hard.
No, you are. And we appreciate you for doing that because it keeps us honest and it keeps us above board. And that's it keeps us out of jail, most importantly, unlike Jacob Wohl, who I think was just charged and sentenced just the other day for robocalls during the 2020 election that were telling voters in, I think, Michigan or Wisconsin. Somewhere in the Midwest, telling like predominantly Black and Latino voters like the wrong date for the election.
Oh, no, it was much worse. They were saying that if you go vote, we're going to run warrant. They will run warrant checks on you and straight to jail.
Oh, yeah. And they were doing these robocalls it was in the Midwest. And so they just got charged with that just the other day. So, that's that's a lot of fun. So sometimes the bad actors do get held accountable, and that's a good thing. But yeah, we should never hold ourselves like by that standard. And I guess maybe if you could just elaborate, like, especially when we see folks like the former president, for instance, like continuing to kind of delay and push off these court dates around, his taxes or the documents investigation or whatever. It always sometimes feels like, oh man, they get away with everything. How come we have to be so like strict and on the level? And like you just said, it's because we are a unique target and we don't have the resources. But I guess, can you talk a little bit more just about like, cases where it's like, I feel like there's always a situation where like right wingers will do something crazy, and then it'll be like, okay, how is no one going to jail for that?
Yeah.
Can you just like talk a little bit about that?
Sometimes I think it feels like progressive organizations are under much more of a microscope and under much greater threat. I think that's actually probably true. One of the reasons why it feels that way during election periods is that it's the time in which those organizations are most likely to make mistakes that will come back and bite them, right? Because you have to leave trails. You have to have contribution and expense reports when you put out all your materials. They have to have the appropriate disclosures and information. You will leave fingerprints if you screw up, right? So it's a fertile field for people who would come and challenge your organization later on. But as far as right wingers, I think there's a feeling on the part of regulators that they're on much more difficult ground going after those groups because they will stick together, they will fund one another, they will potentially resort to extra legal activity. It's sort of one way to say this, but I feel eternally disappointed by what happened to an organization like Acorn 15 years ago, where we didn't demonstrate the sufficient solidarity that would have prevented what was an honorable and great organization from being essentially murdered in public. There seemed to be no fear going after them because there was no groundswell of progressive organizations banding together to help save them or to stand up for them. And I hope we learned a lesson on that, because if that happens again, and it may, we need to be better prepared and have our solidarity in order.
Yeah, completely. And Maria Teresa on our team famously uses Acorn as kind of the example of that. And we, I think, just did a training this week on that for some of our partners too. So it's a huge deal. And so but it is a very helpful learning example of what you're talking about.
It is, but I want to say, and I will say this, I will till the day I die, Acorn wasn't perfect, but we failed Acorn.
Absolutely. Bethany, I want to come back to you, if that's okay. I wanted to get your take on, like we mentioned before, it's a very difficult time for a lot of folks. We're still in that kind of pandemic, growing pains situation. What does the landscape out there look like, just generally based on, past elections? How is it the same? How is it different? And is there anything that's surprising you so far about the midterm election and how it's unfolding?
Well, I think the landscape's pretty much the same as it always is. It's a midterm. You have to remind people that they should vote, and that the stakes are always high, right? The stakes are higher than ever. Our democracy, our freedom, our rights to abortion, to safe abortion are on the ballot, and also the future of our country and the future of Nevada. It's all right now, and you can take a part. You can have a say by voting right now and vote early. I think that what we're hearing on the doors is that the price of rent has gone up, and that the MAGA Republicans are so extreme, and that they are a threat to workers and our values. Workers know that these MAGA Republicans don't stand with working families. They know that and we're really intentional about talking about the price of things. So like insulin, for example, the price of it is $3, but the cost, right? It cost $3 when it was sold as a patent 100 years ago, but now the price of it set by big pharma is much higher. And so the price that corporations are setting on all of these things, from food to gas to groceries and rent, is the thing that we're laser focused on, and you can do something about it right now by voting for elected leaders who will continue to stand with working families and fight against these Wall Street landlords and big oil, big pharma, and greedy corporations. And so, I think that the landscape is always that it's sometimes stacked against working families, but because workers have a strong union, because we have a strong progressive coalition that includes Battle-Born Progress Plan, Culinary, and others, we're able to fight back and have a really big say because we are at the table. And so workers know that with their union, they have a voice, and that's why they are canvassing. That's why they have this huge effort to knock on over 1 million doors this cycle to ensure that leaders who have our backs, that we have theirs. And we're also continuing to re-elect other culinary union members back to office, right? And other folks may not know, but Congressman Stephen Horsford, he's one of us, Congresswoman, Senator Jackie Rosen, she's a member. She's not on the ballot right now, but she's part of the delegation, and she's a former culinary union member. And down the ballot, there are many culinary union members and what we affectionately like to say culinary kids, children of culinary union members who are on the ballot. And so for us, seeing members and children of culinary members elected into office is just, we're so proud to see that, because we have our people from our community who look like us, who are from our communities in office, who we don't have to explain to, like, the issues that are facing us, because they're from our communities. And so that's been always so full to see, and it's just inspiring.
Yeah, and I really like that answer for a few reasons, but I think that, that number one, just pointing out at how embedded the culinary union is really in the Nevada community, because it isn't even just about, the worker in their workplace, but it's their whole family, right? And their whole family has healthcare needs, and culinary union's been on the front lines of a lot of these fights at the legislature on capping drug costs and trying to create some transparency around drug pricing and hospital billing and things like that, because these hospital networks, these big pharma companies, are relentless about gouging just regular old working families here in Nevada on just the essential medicine that they need. And I really like that point, again, of just pointing out how it really is like it's about I just choked on water. It's about family, it's about community, and it really extends to much broader than that. And so, yeah, and you mentioned a little bit about what inspires folks to go out and do this work. It can't possibly be easy to ask someone to kind of take some time off from their day job to go and knock doors, even if that's not what they're used to. Like, what does that inspiration really look like from members who are out knocking doors?
Yeah, and I was trying to have a culinary union canvasser join us, but I think in the field the reception is just a little difficult. But yeah, so we have culinary union members who've been out several times. They might have been out during 2020, during a pandemic. And during the pandemic, culinary was one of the only organizations in the country that was out in the streets to canvass every day. And we were able to do that because we used the protections of the Senate bill for COVID worker safety law. We used that to build and ground our framework for how we would conduct door-to-door canvassing during a pandemic, and kept workers safe. And so that bill protected canvassers when they were in the field, but it also prevented so many culinary union members from passing away, right? That we did lose about 200 culinary union members and their families to COVID during that time. But if you can just remember back to June 2020, when we went back to work after the shutdowns, there was no hope of a vaccine. There was no mask mandate. It was just, we were still wiping down groceries that you would get from the grocery store. And in that time, hundreds of thousands of hospitality workers went back to work and were essential frontline workers. And in that time, Republicans looked and said, no, these people do not deserve to go back to work. And no, these people do not deserve to have groundbreaking laws to keep them safe from the spread of COVID in the workplace. And so the canvassers who come out, they know this, and they have been saying they've been seeing every step of the way how Democrats have had our backs. And we know what's possible when Democrats are in every level, because they're from our communities, right? They're from they're culinary members themselves. And we also can communicate directly to them and exactly what the issues are at hand. And so we have culinary members who are in a they've been canvassers before, and now they are leads or captains on our Canvas program, and they are developing and training and mentoring the next generation of leaders. And that's really how the union is built. And our entire union, nearly comes from the rank and file. And so we have captains and leads now who are culinary union members who've been canvassing for cycles. They're training the next generation. And we also have culinary union families. So we have a lot of teams where it's the mom who's a culinary union member and then her son who's a culinary kid. And we have so much of that happening throughout the structure of 400 canvassers. And, it's really, I love to see it, because our union reflects the diversity of Nevada. We're 54% Latino, 55% women. We're the culinary union is the largest organization of immigrants, of Black workers, Latino workers, and AAPI workers. And so our Canvas program really reflects the rich diversity of Nevada. And that's also why we think Nevada should be first in the nation, because we are so diverse. And just in Nevada, every vote is contested, and we're fine with that, because we are deeply rooted in this community. We are 87 years old, and we continue to do the everyday organizing to transform the landscape that workers are facing. And so we've done the work to make sure that we have a Democratic governor, 2 Democratic senators, and an almost entirely Democratic delegation, because we are able to just transform policies. And we talked about Nevada legislature. Culinary Union worked for 25 years, literally 25 years, to end surprise bills in Nevada. And that was an effort led by a former culinary union shop steward and member, Assemblywoman Maggie Carlton. And that took us 25 years and her 25 years to do, but we did it. And that really started as something that culinary union members were facing when they went to the hospital, and a surprise medical bill would hit. But really, us winning that for everyone means that everyone in Nevada no longer has to deal with a surprise medical bill. And so that's how having a strong union in your city or in our state or in our country really helps everyone else.
It absolutely does. And I will just say, Maggie Carlton, all-time favorite NV Ledge member. I think that's a uncontroversial opinion, but I think it was worth putting out there. And I think the thing that's wild with Republicans, criticizing or trying to get folks to go back to work, before vaccines, before masks and everything like that. We had a press conference just earlier this week where and a member of the culinary union spoke at it, actually, on kind of that exact topic, where we see a lot of this criticism directed of like, oh, they should have just sent people back to work. It's like, okay, so genius, how long do you think that would have lasted before you have workers getting sick and taking that home to their families, and then their families getting sick, and people dying or being left with long-term side effects that then debilitate them later in life, or affect their economic opportunities going forward? Because we know they don't care from a moral perspective, but just even from a pragmatic dollars and cents perspective, would have been an absolutely atrocious idea. And that's why those protections her workers were necessary. And so I think that again just kind of exposes that, this whole we're the party of the working man is just a lot of empty rhetoric as usual. Well,
When
great.
also it's a lie. It's just a lie.
Oh, it's a lie. Yeah, it's see, I feel like we talk about the big lie, but there's just so many lies that really it's hard to even really pinpoint one of them as the big lie because it's just all dishonesty up and down the board. So um so I want to actually take some questions from chat here while we have time. There have been questions rolling in the chat. If anyone has questions for our guests tonight, please make sure you get those in the comments ASAP so we can make sure to go through them tonight. I wanted to take the first question actually from Amber. She asks, Bradley, what do you make of Florida giving felons the right to vote and then taking that away? They've arrested people who voted who have voted even though they received voter registration cards. And of course, Nevada, for those who don't know, actually restored rights to formerly incarcerated folks. That was a bill signed by Governor Sisolak in 2019. And that enfranchised about 77,000 individuals. But yeah, I haven't been following too closely the Florida case, but Bradley, maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah. First of all, the sort of bill you're talking about was spearheaded by Jason Frierson, who's now the U.S. Attorney, and I was so proud of that because, people can ask you how you feel about felon voting restoration. I was of the mind that it never should have been taken away to begin with. It was disgraceful that after you'd served your time and completed your sentence, there is absolutely no reason why would we not want people to rejoin society and have a stake in that society? The greatest symbol of that, of course, is exercising the franchise. So here in Nevada, we have done the right thing, and sort of we always had a process for it. Now it's automatic. That was the problem, is that people could say, oh, they can go get the franchise back, but it was so difficult to do. Now it's automatic. So that's a great improvement. Now to Amber's question, it seems to me like what they did in Florida was they set a trap, right? They made it so confusing, and then snatched it away and didn't inform folks. And as you say, some of them had voter registration cards. And then, this Governor DeSantis forms this insane posse of election cops who then go out and arrest these folks for having voted when, by all accounts.
Hold on, back up. There's election cops now.
Yes, there is an election force in Florida that is out there, of course, with camera crews in tow, because it's an important political event for that governor to show that he's out there doing this, showing up and arresting these folks, which is absolutely disgraceful, because now it seems much like these flights to Martha Vineyard and all those other nonsense things that he's doing, is there's an inherent cruelty that serves people like Governor DeSantis's purposes as spectacle, right? Because this is in fact what many of the folks on the right are rooting for and enjoy seeing and take pleasure in, when in fact these people were essentially set up for this. Right, so it is a terrible travesty and a betrayal, I think, of the sort of most basic aspects of democracy. So, Amber, that's what I think about it. Anyway.
Yeah, election cops. As Bethany said in our little Zoom chat, like, don't give Nevada any ideas because
Right.
yeah, I don't know what we're going to do with election cops. That's ridiculous. I want to kind of combine a few of the questions we've gotten, have been asking basically to the effect of what are folks hearing out at the doors? Are there any interesting stories or things like that? Bethany, I wanted to come to you with that one. I know we initially planned to have one of Culinary Union's canvassers. I think the connection's a little rough for him right now, but to what extent you can weigh in, what are we hearing at the doors from folks that Culinary is knocking on?
Sure. Well, the most updated thing that we're hearing from the doors is I voted today or I just voted. So that's a great sign and that's great. And so yeah, I'd love to hear that from the feedback loop. We're also hearing from people that we're still doing education on felon rights restoration. And so one of our political canvassers sent me a message of a voter she ran into, and she told him like, oh, it's okay, your rights have been restored, you can vote now. So he did not know that. He went and voted, and they took a picture together with his I voted sticker. And so that those there's just thousands, actually no, there's over 120,000 of those types of conversations happening every day on the Culinary Unions program. So far, we've had over 123,000 of conversations with voters. And, every conversation they're just so enriching, so positive, and voters are really loving seeing someone at their doors. I think that type of one-on-one conversation that we are just known for and known to do in our everyday organizing, it's really helpful to cut down on misinformation, disinformation. You're there with the voter, you can have a conversation, you can talk through issues, you can find common ground, you can educate people on where to vote, how to vote early, how to vote by mail, how to vote early on election or on election day. And these stories, I think, are definitely part of that. We're also hearing young voters and their families who are excited about President Biden canceling student debt, right, and forgiving so many Nevadans student debt. In fact, I think Nevada is the #1 state that is benefiting from the Biden-Harris administration's relief. We're also hearing that voters are really motivated to vote because of the findings of the January 6th investigation. I think that's been something that was just really shocking to see, the January 6th attack and how the MAGA Republicans are really using that. We're also hearing that abortion is very important, and even though abortion is protected in the Nevada's constitution, it's still, we think, something that Republicans, and they've said they want to do a national abortion ban. And I think the thing and how that impacts Culinary Union members. So we have I'm so sorry. Okay.
It's okay. We've canine difficulties.
Sorry. So Culinary Union members, we have 60,000 members and 145,000 family members. And so that makes us the largest consumer of healthcare in Nevada. And we never allow the boss, the man, the company to tell us what we can or cannot do with our healthcare and try to and cut away and take back from our healthcare. And so we will not allow a politician like Joe Lombardo or what's his name, Adam Laxalt, to also interfere with our rights.
I prefer what's his name. I think that's a better moniker. And speaking of what's his name, we have a breaking news update right here on Out in Front. I wish I had little like breaking news music. Maybe our editors can add that. Elon Musk is now officially taken control of Twitter, effective immediately, as both CEOs, Parag, I'm not going to bother pronouncing the CEO and CFO's name, but the point is, Twitter is now belongs to Elon Musk, and I believe we got a question in the chat to some effect of why that sucks, and I actually want to combine that with another question as kind of our closer, which was actually also asked by Brian, funny enough, which is why do out-of-state folks with money want to control how things are running here in Nevada? And like to combine these two concepts, why are billionaires the problem? Or why are they trying to subvert our democracy, both in sponsoring weird ballot questions and also buying social media platforms so they can allow for disinformation to spread? And I feel like both of you might have some hot takes on that. Either one of you who wants to go first.
Yeah, we sort of always, saw the Elon Musk thing coming, right? I mean, he had sort of backed himself in a corner, whether that was strategic or not. I mean, all of us, many of us are on Twitter, many of us grudgingly, right? I participate, to find things out because it's a news source, but I less and less will actually do anything on Twitter because there are diminishing returns, both of news, interesting conversation, and respect for other human beings. It's just not a pleasant place to spend time, hang out, or engage people on. I don't think that's going to improve under Elon Musk. Look, I'm for free speech. Absolutely right, which means I am free to ignore that platform and to ignore Elon Musk, and I will continue doing so with tremendous enthusiasm. Billionaires are the number one. The fact that we have billionaires is ridiculous, but billionaires are the problem in many ways because they're a symbol of the inequality that has taken not just this state or this country, but the globe by storm over really just the last half century. And you can trace that, and I'll sort of bring Bethany in this. Labor unions and a strong labor movement is in fact absolutely indispensable to the political and economic health of a country. And you can absolutely chart the downward spiral of this country into inequality. And by that, I don't just mean some people make a lot more money than somebody else, but then what they're able to do with that money, because they have built avenues of power and communication and influence that then drown out all other interests on their behalves, especially in the areas of elections and politics and economic growth and sharing the wealth and all of those things. So, it's over the last half century, the monopolization or the rise of influencers. I don't necessarily need to be influenced. I need to be able to express myself, right? And so does everyone else. And a healthier labor movement in this country would and did for almost a century in this country, right, provide avenues into the middle class, avenues to economic security for millions of Americans, and we have largely lost that. And so I am so proud to share time tonight with Bethany, because culinary has always been such a shining example of carrying on that fight. And I hope to see that more. And over the last few years, you've seen that there is something simmering in the labor movement across the country. You're seeing a rise in, I'm not sure I'd call it militancy yet, but certainly there are greater interests in labor actions and strikes and organizing and forming unions. That's the road to greater economic health, in which we'll be able to say one day, maybe not that the billionaire is extinct, but that he or she doesn't have the stranglehold over American politics and economics that they have now.
That's true. Bethany, do you have anything to add?
I think it's concerning. I think that as billionaires continue to privatize our newspapers and with their grand ideas and experiments, it's concerning. But that's why a strong union is important. I saw news that Twitter employees, that Elon's going to expect to lay off about 75% of the workforce, and that's really concerning for the workers. And I hope that they can unionize and that they can fight back. But it's hard. It's going to be hard to do that without a union. And and I think that Twitter employees who've really been, many of them standing in the way and recommending that, Trump be banned, et cetera, like all of these things. It's concerning to see that if Elon will run, he's run Tesla as an example with union busting. I'm not a fan. And, and the strong unions are important. And I hope that those workers can unionize and that their jobs are protected. And that's the thing is that's why a union's so important. Companies change hands all the time. And if you don't have a union, you don't have the job security and peace of mind. And culinary union contracts have what is, Bradley probably knows, owners and successorship language. And that means that company changes hands, like let's say the Sahara, when it closed many years ago, was nothing was there and reopened as the SLS. Our contracts continued even during that time, and when the Sahara reopened as the SLS and then renamed later as the Sahara back again, all of those workers were unionized, and even when the casino was closed, those workers had the right to return to the SLS when it reopened, the exact same workers that worked at the previous Sahara location. And so, union contract language can be really historic and innovative, and successorship language is part of that, with technology language. And that's a way to ensure that workers aren't left behind as the company changes, evolves, or has more automation come in and technology. So yeah, I encourage Twitter workers to organize, and everyone else should organize. And I think we are seeing that more and more workers across the country are unionizing, and the sentiment ratings at unions are more popular than ever. And look at workers at Starbucks, etc. Right. And in Las Vegas, you should know, when you travel out of the Harry Reid International Airport, all of the workers at Harry Reid International Airport are union, from the Starbucks to the Burger King, and they are culinary union members. And we represent hundreds of Starbucks workers in Nevada, and have for many years. And anything is possible with the union. You can have fair wages, job security, good health benefits, be treated with respect and dignity, and you deserve all of those things. And so unionize.
Yes, unionize. Those of you in big tech, we're talking to you. I mean, I didn't mean to be mean about that, because you might have just gotten fired by Elon Musk, but all the more reason why you should make sure you join a union. Well, I want to thank Bradley and Bethany so much for joining us tonight. This was a great show. I really appreciated y'all out there on the interwebs for sticking with us. We're going to close out, but not before I tell you about an exciting event happening tomorrow. If you haven't voted yet, and you are a fan of unions and economic justice, I suggest coming to East Las Vegas Community Center tomorrow at 3:30. There's going to be a rally with Senator Bernie Sanders. Yes, you heard that right, Bernie Sanders. I know a lot of y'all are fans of him out there. So if you want to hang out with some like-minded folks, experience some fun, get excited for the election, come out to East Las Vegas Community Center if you're down in Vegas at 3:30 tomorrow for the rally, and we'll be sending everyone there to East Las Vegas Library to then go and cast their vote. So make sure that you do that tomorrow. We will put the link in the chat for signing up to that, and please check that out tomorrow. Anyway, folks, we'll be back with you next week on our final regular OIF episode before the election. Tune in with us Thursday at 5 next week. Don't miss it. This is Will Pregman signing off for Out in Front. Take care, y'all.